Get ready to explore the dark side of one of the most powerful empires of the pre-Columbian era, the Aztec Empire. At its height, the Aztec Empire spanned 200,000 square kilometers and was made up of 371 city-states spread throughout 38 provinces. While the city-states had some autonomy, they were all united under the rule of the Aztec Emperor. Today, we're taking you on a journey to the heart of the Aztec Empire, where we'll uncover the brutal and shocking ways in which the Aztecs enforced their laws. Let's dive in. The Aztec Empire had a unique ruling system, much like a kingdom, with Huey as their leader, chosen by the gods, and a second-in-command called the Nezahualcoyotl. With thousands of officials and civil servants, the Nezahualcoyotl was responsible for running the government every day. Priests, judges, and military leaders also played important roles. Even though religion was a big part of everyday life for the Aztecs, practicality was the most important thing when it came to making laws and keeping order. Each city had its own set of laws and rules, which meant that what was allowed in one city might not be allowed in another. Punishments were very harsh, including strangulation and burning, as they didn't have a permanent place to put people who broke the law. They used these punishments as a means of control. Now, how did they deal with crimes? So, in the land of the Aztecs, if someone did something wrong or bad, they would have to go to court. The judges were usually older, respected warriors from a local area. They would listen to what the person did wrong and then decide what punishment was fair. But if the crime was really serious, they would have to go to a special court in the big city of Tenochtitlan. It was called the Telco Court. This court was for crimes that were worse than usual, like stealing something important or hurting someone really badly. Sometimes, if a noble person did something really bad, they would have to go to the emperor's palace to be tried. The emperor was the most powerful person in the Aztec Empire, so it was a big deal to go there. Sometimes the emperor would even be the judge. Surprisingly, the Aztec justice system was pretty quick and efficient. They didn't have a lot of prisons, so it was important to make sure that people who did bad things were punished right away. The Aztecs punished those who committed crimes very harshly. There were many things that could get anyone in big trouble, like hurting or killing someone, lying under oath, hurting a woman by force, ending a baby's life before it's born, and stealing from people. All these things can result in death. Also, cheating in business, saying bad things about someone to ruin their reputation, ruining someone's crops, selling things you stole, lying about how much something weighs or costs, using magic to hurt others, doing inappropriate things with your family members, taking bribes if you worked for the government, doing things to make people get angry and riot, trying to start a rebellion, disobeying orders if you were a soldier, pretending to be the emperor, or doing bad things while working in a court also resulted in death. But, astonishingly, stealing was one of the most serious crimes of all. If you took something that didn't belong to you, you could be put to death. This was especially true if you stole from a store or a holy place, took weapons or military items, or took a lot of food, like more than 20 ears of corn. If you only took a small thing, like a piece of candy, you would probably have to give it back and maybe pay some extra money to make things right. But if you couldn't pay back what you took, then you would have to work for the person you stole from like a slave. Other than that, adultery also resulted in death. A married person could receive the death penalty if they had a romantic relationship with another married person. And even if someone knew about it and didn't tell anyone, they could also be punished. So, that's actually dangerous, we must say. But here's the thing, this society had a double standard. If a married man had a romantic relationship with a married woman, he could get away with it. But if a married woman did the same thing, she would be considered guilty no matter what. Additionally, there was a rule that stated young people who got really drunk in public could face the death penalty. But if you were over 70 years old, you could drink as much as you wanted without getting into trouble. So, people in this society had to be really careful about what they did, especially if they were married or liked to drink. It wasn't easy living in a place with such strict rules. There were no prisons, so if you did something really bad, you could be sentenced to death. This was a common punishment back then. The execution would take place at a special location, like a temple altar, where the person would be strangled or stoned to death on the spot. Even the rich and powerful nobles were not exempt from punishment. In fact, they were held to an even higher standard than the rest of society. However, not all crimes were considered very serious. For these less serious crimes, the person who did wrong would have to pay back the person they hurt. For example, if there was a fight and someone got hurt, the person who started the fight might have to pay for the medical bills. Slavery was also a common punishment back then, and in some cases, people who did something really bad were sent away from their community and forced to live somewhere else. This was called exile, but it was not a very common punishment. Nezahualcoyotl, a ruler of Texcoco City, was passionate about fair treatment and wanted to create a more consistent system of justice. He developed 80 written laws based on evidence, where everyone was equal under the law. If someone broke the laws, they faced a public punishment to ensure people followed the rules. Children were also subject to the law, and their parents could take them to court for disobedience. If they were from a noble family, they had to be respectful or risk being sentenced to death. The Aztecs had a very cruel way of dealing with prisoners of war. Even though they were treated as part of a ritual, it seems they also wanted to punish them. One of the most horrible ways they killed prisoners was by slowly cooking them in a fire. The poor person would be put in and taken out of the fire over and over again until they were almost dead. And then, the worst part, their heart would be cut out while it was still beating. If they wanted to use a simpler method, they would just lay the prisoner down on a special stone, cut open their chest with a sharp blade made of obsidian, and take out their heart. It's hard to imagine such terrible things happening, but it's important to remember that this was a long time ago, and people had different beliefs and ways of doing things back then. When they captured an enemy warrior, they actually respected them and gave them a special kind of death. One way was to tie the warrior to a big rock and give them a club to fight with. Then, an Aztec fighter, who had a similar club but with a sharp edge, would try to defeat the captive warrior. If the captive warrior won, they might even be set free. Another way was to chain the warrior's ankles to a platform and make them fight. If they won, they could go free, but if they lost, they would be punished. The Aztecs also had something called a firing squad. This was a group of archers who would tie a condemned person to two posts and shoot arrows at them. The archers would aim at every part of the person's body except for their heart and head, which they saved for last. But things were different for female victims. The Aztecs would treat them like goddesses before they were beheaded later. It's strange to think about, but it's a part of history that we can learn from today. And that's the end of today's journey. We hope you like it. If you haven't until now, then hit the subscribe button for more amazing videos like this one.